Welcome back. In a moment we'll examine our fascination with skyscrapers. But first, here are some other stories to keep an eye on. At least 6 people have been killed at a shooting at a mosque in Canada. The attack took place at the Quebec Islamic Cultural Centre. 2 suspects have been arrested. Police in the Philippines are to suspend their so-called war on drugs until after an investigation into police corruption. Thousands have been killed since the start of a crackdown on drugs began in the country. And the British government has rejected calls to demote the planned visit by the US President Donald Trump from full state visit status, where he'd be a guest of the Queen. A petition demanding the visit to be downscaled was launched in response to the President's ban on people coming to the US from 7 Muslim-majority countries. It had reached 1 million signatures by midday on Monday. Now, for decades, having tall, imposing skyscrapers has been a must for cities hoping to impress the world. It's become a competition as cities try to outdo one another by constructing taller and taller buildings. But with so many cities in the race, the top spot is never held for long. One World Trade Center in the United States and China's Guangzhou CTF Finance Center are the world's 4th and 5th tallest buildings. The Makkah Royal Clock Tower in Saudi Arabia is in 3rd place. It's part of the government-owned Abraj Al Bait complex of 7 skyscraper hotels. China's tallest building, the Shanghai Tower, comes in 2nd at a height of 632 meters. It boasts the world's highest observation deck and the world's fastest elevators. Burj Khalifa in Dubai is currently the world's tallest building. The 828-meter tall structure has 163 floors. But the giants of today's cities are dwarfed by those in development. Jeddah Tower will assume top spot when it's finished in 2020. It will be the first tower to reach higher than 1 kilometer. And plans for the Sky Mile Tower in Japan are set to raise the bar further still. The tower will reach an eye-watering 1,700 meters into the skies over Tokyo. It's been proposed as part of an eco-friendly area designed to withstand concerns such as rising sea levels, typhoons and seismic activity. If approved, construction on the tower isn't expected to finish until at least 2045. Still with us is Vanessa Castambrotto, who is the Senior Lecturer of the Development Planning Unit at the University College in London, and also David Nicholson-Cole, Assistant Professor in Architecture at the University of Nottingham. David, I know this is a big subject, but how do these structures stay upright?
Some amazingly advanced developments in engineering, both in structure and in things like resonance damping in typhoon and earthquake conditions. But you can see from my shirt that I'm interested in sustainable tall buildings, and I think these buildings are not actually sustainable. They are, should we say, posters for each of the big cities, and they're not typical of that city. They are, should we, giving huge relevance to that city in terms of attracting tourists. And I think every city needs to have one. Like we've got the Shard in London. Shanghai was the 3 Graces, the 3 wonderful tall buildings of Pudong. But they're not typical, they are exceptional.
What makes a building sustainable in your view, David? Well,
the kind of buildings which are about 100 metres, which contain large numbers of people working and living and shopping and culture, those buildings make a city sustainable if they can reduce the transport and commuting costs. Individual buildings of 500, 600 metres are purely for presentation, to demonstrate what a great, powerful city it is. They don't actually contribute to sustainability. And although the Shanghai Tower has got wind turbines at the top, that is a demonstration of some technologies, but not actually going to affect the building energy consumption much. I think every city needs its Shard, and Chicago's got the Willis Tower, but it's a lucky thing that we don't have to have them all like that.
Let me just bring in Vanessa Castambrotto at this point. Sustainable buildings or tall buildings, why do we like them at all?
Well, I think tall buildings belong to certain kinds of imagination about how cities should be, but I don't think those imaginations correspond to what actually sustainable cities should be. And if you ask me that question, what makes a building sustainable is whether it meets the needs of those who live in that city. And those big towers often they don't. The main challenge in our cities is inequality. Inequality in terms of access to resources, in access to livelihood opportunities, and in terms of exposure to environmental risks. And those tall buildings don't solve any of those challenges.
So they are just for either the workspace of the elite, the very wealthy, or the place to live for the very wealthy, or the place to shop for the very wealthy. But hang on, if that gives a space for the wealthy, does that not free up more space for those who have less money?
Very occasionally, you see iconic buildings which really respond to the need of the city, to the needs of the city, by providing public space, by providing theater or services that people really need. So, for example, Newcastle has some beautiful examples of that. But I don't think that's the most common approach to these buildings. These buildings often become vanity projects that have little to do with what the city is about.
David, I'm curious about what's feasible. As we heard, the idea of being 1.6, 1.7, maybe 2 kilometres high at some point. Is there no theoretical maximum to the engineering we have at our disposal to build these things at the moment?
I don't think there is a theoretical maximum, because the engineering keeps getting further advanced. But the question of, should we say, the futility of doing this, you don't actually achieve urban sustainability just by going taller. How many of these kilometre-high buildings could one city tolerate, really? It would be, I mean, even New York, for example, only has 2 high-rise areas. It's only got the Wall Street area and so what's called Upper Midtown. It can't. The rest of New York is relatively normal height. In Paris, they put them all out on the La Défense, and in London, most of them are out either in the Bank or in Canary Wharf. I think a skyline can only take that many tall buildings before it becomes a menagerie.
But that's an aesthetic
so
view, is it, rather than a pragmatic one?
Would we want to? Every city has a planning authority, and they obviously look ahead to see what they want to do. For example, in Shanghai, I don't think they would add a 4th super high-rise to the 3 that they've got. I think they regard them as a beautiful urban composition. And if somebody came along offering to do a tower that was 2 kilometres high, I think they wouldn't do it.
You see, I'm wondering, Vanessa, about the quality of life. If you build these super high buildings, you literally do not need to go anywhere else. I could live at one level, shop at another level, work at another level, and your life has shrunk to that one building. You could live there all the time and never leave it.
Yeah, I actually also have done research in Hong Kong, and I've observed people who develop those types of lifestyles. And you see that, for example, they don't suffer energy poverty in terms of accessing the energy supply, but they suffer energy poverty in the sense that they depend on air conditioning technologies to cool themselves. And that's why these ventilation movements that David was mentioning, they may have an impact, but most of all is how are we conceptualizing our style of living?
Is it bad for us to conceptualize it so tight? It's better for us, isn't it, to get out and explore the world from time to time?
You were asking why people would go to cities. I think it's because of diversity. It's diversity of styles. I'm not saying somebody cannot find their own happiness in that style, but there are many others. I'd like to tell you something that maybe is surprising. We worry a lot about slums and informal settlements, and rightly so, because they have very serious health problems. But our research shows that in environmental management, informal settlements may manage resources, and in relation to tall buildings, in informal settlements you see higher densities than in some of those tall towers. So that has direct implications for sustainability.
Well, we shall see where we go in a few years' time. Vanessa Castenbrother, thank you. David Nicholson-Cole joining us from Nottingham as well. Thank you very much. We end with our Insight Bite. As usual, this is just a little something that we feel you should know. And today, it's a new recruitment initiative from Starbucks. The coffee giant has responded to the Trump administration's travel ban by announcing that it will hire 10,000 refugees around the world over the next 5 years. The president's executive order bars citizens from 7 Muslim-majority countries from entering the United States for a period of 90 days and suspends the US's refugee program for 120 days. Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz said the president's order had caused confusion, surprise and opposition. And that's all from me for now. I'm Martin Stanford. That was Inside.